You know, we have this tendency to want to force life to go our way. We want to get this job. We want to marry this person. We want to live in this place. And when it doesn't happen, we think something must be wrong with us, or something must be wrong with the universe. But what if there's nothing wrong? What if everything's working perfectly, and it's just your expectations that are off? In this video, we're going to talk about a powerful quote by Alan Watts that will change the way you see the world forever. So, let's get into it. Alan Watts was a British philosopher and writer who lived from 1915 to 1973. He was a popularizer of Eastern philosophies in the West, and he's best known for his book, The Way of Zen. Watts was a brilliant lecturer, and his talks were often improvisational and highly entertaining. He's been a huge influence on people like Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, and his ideas continue to resonate with people all over the world today. The quote we're talking about today is from one of his books called The Book on the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are. It's not a very well-known book, but it contains some really profound wisdom. In this book, Watts says this: "When you stop forcing life, everything changes. Life begins to work for you instead of against you." This is such a simple yet powerful statement that can really change the way you approach life. We all have goals and dreams that we want to achieve. We want to be successful, happy, and fulfilled. But sometimes, it seems like no matter what we do, we just can't get things to go our way. We force ourselves to study for exams, to eat healthy foods, to exercise every day, to socialize with certain people, or to pursue a certain career path. We feel like we need to control everything in order to achieve our goals. But what if the secret to success is actually in letting go of that need to control everything? When we stop forcing life, amazing things start to happen. We become more open to new possibilities and opportunities. We become more flexible and adaptable in the face of change. And we become more peaceful and joyful in our everyday lives. Now let me share a story that illustrates this point perfectly. There were two monks who were walking through the forest. Suddenly, they came across a river, but the water was so high that they couldn't walk across. So they looked around for a boat to take them across, but there wasn't any. Just then, they saw a small raft on the other side of the river. So the two monks decided to cross the river by using the raft. As they were crossing, one of the monks started to panic because he realized that the raft could only hold one person at a time. He told his friend to stay on the raft while he swam to the other side. But the second monk refused. "No," he said, "we're not crossing this river separately. Either we both cross together, or we don't cross at all." And so the two monks waited until the water level went down, and they were able to walk across the river together. This story teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes we try to force things to happen our way, but it's important to remember that we can't control everything. Sometimes we just have to wait and trust that things will work out for the best. Like the two monks, when we learn to accept things as they are, we become more peaceful and calm. We stop struggling against reality, and we start working with it. And that's when amazing things start to happen. Let's look at another example. Imagine you're planning to go on vacation, right? You've saved up money for months to afford this trip. You've booked flights and hotels, and you've made all the necessary arrangements. But then, suddenly, your plans change. A family emergency comes up, and you have to cancel your trip. You might feel disappointed and frustrated, but if you can learn to accept the situation and be flexible, you might find that something even better awaits you. Maybe you discover a hidden gem in your own city, or maybe you meet someone who changes your life during that time. The point is that when we stop forcing things to happen our way, we open ourselves up to new possibilities. We might not always be able to control the circumstances, but we can control our attitude towards those circumstances. You know, we all get upset when our plans fall through. But if we can learn to accept things as they are, we might just find that something even better is waiting for us. You never know. You might find a hidden gem in your own city, or meet someone who changes your life. That's the beauty of being flexible and open-minded. Let's take another example from the natural world. Have you ever seen a river trying to flow upstream? It's futile and pointless. The river might try to go upstream, but it'll never be successful. However, when the river flows downstream, it becomes a powerful force of nature that can carve through rock and shape the landscape. Similarly, when we try to force things to happen our way, we become like a river flowing upstream. We're wasting our energy on something that's not going to work out anyway. But when we learn to let go and allow things to happen naturally, we become like a river flowing downstream. We become more peaceful and calm, and we allow life to flow through us rather than resisting it. Think about it this way. If you want to succeed in your relationships, stop trying to control the other person. Stop trying to make them do what you want them to do. Instead, focus on being the best possible version of yourself. Focus on being loving, supportive, and trustworthy. When you do that, you become the kind of person that others want to be around. Or let's say you want to be successful in your career. Stop trying to climb the corporate ladder. Stop trying to get ahead of everyone else. Instead, focus on doing your job to the best of your ability. Focus on being reliable, productive, and efficient. When you do that, you'll eventually get the recognition you deserve. I know it's not easy, but when we practice this way of thinking, we'll become more flexible and adaptable in the face of change. We'll also become more peaceful and joyful in our everyday lives. So the next time you find yourself getting upset over something that's out of your control, take a step back and remember the words of Alan Watts. Stop forcing life and allow things to happen naturally. You might just be surprised at what happens next. And that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed this exploration of Alan Watts' quote, "When you stop forcing life, everything changes. Life begins to work for you instead of against you." Let me know in the comments below how you think about this quote. How has your perspective on forcing life changed after listening to this video? If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos on philosophy and psychology. And if you want to continue learning, I recommend checking out our video on why everything you want is already within you, or our video on The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.
In the dance of existence, so many of us live as though life is a puzzle to be solved, a machine to be controlled, or a prize to be won. We push and pull, force and struggle against the current, convinced that if only we could impose enough will, enough effort, we might steer the vast river of life to our liking. But in doing so, we miss the essential truth that life is not something to be forced or conquered. It is something to be flowed with, something to be danced alongside. Alan Watts taught us that trying to control life is like trying to grasp water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. When you stop forcing life, something remarkable happens. The resistance falls away, and the natural rhythms of existence begin to unfold with ease and grace. It is as if the universe breathes through you rather than against you. This surrender is not weakness but wisdom. It is the recognition that life is a spontaneous, creative process, not a problem to be solved by brute force. When you relinquish the need to control every outcome, you open yourself to the mysterious flow of being, a flow that brings unexpected opportunities, joy, and peace. Psychologically, forcing life often springs from fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, fear of not being enough. This fear drives us to grasp and cling, to strive and struggle endlessly. But in the space created by letting go, fear dissolves, and you discover that existence is far more expansive and supportive than you imagined. The paradox is that by ceasing to force, you often accomplish more, not by direct effort, but by aligning yourself with the natural currents that carry you forward. Life then becomes a dance, not a battle, a melody, not a chore. When you stop forcing, you rediscover the beauty of presence, the simple joy of being here now, in harmony with the unfolding moment. This shift transforms not only how you live, but who you are, opening the door to freedom, creativity, and profound peace. When you try to control life, you often encounter resistance, as if the universe itself pushes back against your efforts. This resistance is not some external punishment, but a natural consequence of the tension created by forcing something that is inherently fluid and dynamic. Life, like water or wind, cannot be grasped or directed by sheer force without slipping through your fingers or blowing in unpredictable ways. Alan Watts invites us to see life not as a problem to be solved, but as a flowing river to be navigated. When you attempt to impose your will rigidly, you create friction, stress, and frustration, because you are opposing the natural movement of things. This opposition is exhausting and ultimately fruitless. However, when you stop forcing life, when you release the illusion that you must control every detail and outcome, the resistance begins to dissolve. Instead of fighting the current, you learn to move with it, to respond to its ebb and flow with flexibility and grace. This surrender does not mean passivity or giving up on your goals. Rather, it means engaging with life in a way that is harmonious rather than combative. The energy that was once wasted on struggle is redirected into creative flow and openness. Psychologically, forcing life stems from a deep-seated fear of uncertainty and vulnerability. We cling tightly because we are afraid of losing control, afraid of the unknown, and afraid of not being enough. This fear causes the mind to tighten its grip, creating a cycle of tension that feeds on itself. Yet, when you learn to let go, even just a little, you invite trust into your experience. Trust that life will unfold in ways that, while not always predictable, are often far richer and more meaningful than any rigid plan you could devise. This trust opens the door to spontaneity and creativity, allowing you to respond to situations with intuition and presence rather than fear and compulsion. Alan Watts often likened this to the difference between swimming upstream and floating downstream. The former is tiring and stressful, while the latter is effortless and joyful. By ceasing to force, you align yourself with the natural rhythms of existence, discovering that life flows more smoothly, opportunities arise more freely, and your own energy feels renewed. The paradox is that surrendering control does not mean losing power. It means gaining a deeper, more authentic power grounded in acceptance and flow. This shift transforms your entire experience, from one of struggle to one of ease, from resistance to harmony. In this state, life no longer feels like a battle to be won, but a dance to be enjoyed. Forcing outcomes in life often springs from a place of fear, a fear of uncertainty, failure, or loss that grips the mind and narrows perception. When you feel afraid, you want to hold tightly onto what you know, to steer every event toward a safe and predictable end. This compulsion to control is a defense mechanism, an attempt to create stability in a world that is inherently unstable. But paradoxically, the more you try to force things, the more elusive the desired results become. Fear blinds you to the natural unfolding of life's processes, causing you to push prematurely or grip too tightly, which leads to frustration and disappointment. Alan Watts taught that this struggle against the unknown arises because the mind mistakes itself for the master of reality, believing it can dictate the terms of existence. Yet life does not submit to force. It dances to its own rhythms, inviting participation rather than domination. When fear is released, trust replaces it. A trust not in external circumstances, but in the flow of life itself. This trust allows you to let go of rigid control and opens the door to creativity and possibility. Psychologically, fear-based forcing traps you in a cycle of tension and resistance, exhausting your energy and clouding your judgment. But when you acknowledge your fear and choose to step back from forcing outcomes, you create space for insight and intuition to arise. You begin to see that life's mysteries cannot be solved by sheer willpower alone. Instead, they require a willingness to be vulnerable, to embrace uncertainty, and to engage with the world as a co-creator rather than a conqueror. This shift from fear to trust dissolves the compulsion to force and replaces it with a fluid responsiveness that honors the spontaneity of existence. It is through this surrender that life's natural creativity reveals itself, bringing forth unexpected opportunities and deeper fulfillment. When you surrender the need to control every outcome, you open yourself to the spontaneous creativity that life naturally offers. Forcing life is an attempt to confine a wild and living process within rigid boundaries. But true vitality emerges only when you allow existence to unfold freely. Alan Watts reminds us that the universe is a creative play, a dance of endless possibilities where rigid plans often give way to unexpected opportunities. When you stop insisting on how things should be and instead attune yourself to what is actually happening, you invite innovation, inspiration, and growth. This surrender to life's spontaneity does not mean passivity or helplessness. It means engaging with the moment fully, with openness and curiosity, rather than resistance. Psychologically, this shift releases the mind from the exhausting effort of constant control and perfectionism. It creates space for intuition and insight to guide your actions, allowing solutions and paths to emerge that you might never have conceived through sheer force. The natural flow of creativity thrives in an environment free from excessive pressure and rigid expectations. By letting go, you become a participant in life's unfolding mystery rather than a dictator attempting to shape every detail. This alignment with life's creative process brings a sense of ease and joy, as you realize that you are part of a larger dance that constantly renews itself. Unexpected opportunities arise precisely because you are no longer resisting or forcing the river, but floating with its current. This openness fosters resilience, adaptability, and a deeper connection with the present moment. In embracing life's spontaneous creativity, you step into a rhythm that is both empowering and liberating, discovering that true accomplishment often comes not from struggle, but from harmony with the unfolding flow. Letting go of the need to force life creates a profound inner space where fear begins to dissolve and a deeper sense of presence and peace can emerge. When you release your grip on control, you no longer waste energy resisting what is. Instead, you meet each moment with openness and acceptance. This psychological shift is transformative because fear often arises from the unknown. When you cling tightly to expectations and outcomes, uncertainty becomes a source of anxiety and tension. But as you stop forcing, you begin to trust the unfolding process, allowing life to reveal itself without the heavy burden of judgment or resistance. Alan Watts often emphasized that true peace is found not in mastering life, but in surrendering to it, in recognizing that existence is a flowing, dynamic process that cannot be pinned down or commanded. This surrender does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It means engaging with life fully, with a calm and steady presence that embraces uncertainty rather than fearing it. As fear subsides, you become more attuned to the present moment, experiencing life more vividly and deeply. This presence brings a sense of calm and clarity that allows you to respond to challenges with wisdom and grace rather than reactivity and struggle. Psychologically, this state fosters resilience, creativity, and well-being, as you are no longer caught in the exhausting cycle of control and resistance. Instead, you flow with the natural rhythms of existence, finding joy and freedom in the simple act of being. This peace is not a distant goal, but a living reality that arises the moment you stop forcing and start trusting the dance of life. Trying to grasp and hold life tightly only causes it to slip away more quickly, much like trying to catch water with your hands. When you clutch too hard, the very thing you desire, peace, happiness, fulfillment, eludes your grasp. Alan Watts often illustrated this paradox by comparing life to a dance or a wave. The more you resist or attempt to control it, the more you are tossed and unsettled. But when you loosen your grip and relax into the movement, you find yourself carried effortlessly and harmoniously. This loosening is not about giving up or neglecting responsibility. It is about recognizing the futility of force against the natural flow. Psychologically, gripping tightly is a response to fear. The fear of losing control, the fear of uncertainty, and the fear of vulnerability. These fears create tension and rigidity in the mind and body, which in turn obstruct the natural flow of energy and creativity. When you learn to loosen your grip, you allow yourself to be present and receptive rather than defensive and controlling. This shift opens you to greater harmony with yourself and the world around you. The paradox is that by loosening your grip, you gain more freedom, more joy, more connection. Instead of struggling against life's currents, you move with them, discovering a rhythm and ease that was always there but obscured by your tight grasp. In this state of harmony, life no longer feels like a battle but a dance, and you become an active participant in its unfolding rather than a desperate controller trying to hold it still. When you align yourself with life's natural flow instead of forcing outcomes, you tap into a current far more powerful than sheer effort alone. Alan Watts taught that true accomplishment arises not from brute force, but from harmony with the rhythms of existence. When you stop pushing against the tide and instead move with it, your actions become more effective, more effortless, and more creatively inspired. Psychologically, this alignment shifts you from a state of struggle and tension to one of ease and openness. Your energy is no longer drained by resistance. Instead, it flows freely, fueling your creativity and resilience. This does not mean passivity or surrender to circumstance, but an active participation in life's unfolding dance. By recognizing when to act and when to yield, you conserve strength and maximize impact. Opportunities often arise spontaneously when you are attuned to the flow, and solutions emerge from places your conscious mind might never reach. The paradox of alignment is that doing less forcing often results in accomplishing more, because you are working with the deeper currents of life rather than against them. This harmonious engagement fosters a sense of empowerment and freedom, as you realize that you are not a powerless victim of circumstance, but a co-creator of your reality. When you stop forcing life, you enter a state of flow where your intentions, actions, and the world around you move together in a dynamic, creative partnership. This is where true accomplishment, fulfillment, and joy arise, not from struggle, but from surrender and alignment. Freedom and joy naturally arise when you cease the futile effort of forcing life, and instead begin to flow with its rhythms. Alan Watts described life as a spontaneous, unfolding dance, not a rigid march toward predetermined goals. When you stop trying to control every step, you free yourself from the exhausting burden of resistance and open the door to genuine presence and happiness. This freedom is not about escaping responsibility or reality, but about embracing life as it is, with all its uncertainties and surprises. In surrendering to the flow, you release the tension created by fear and attachment, allowing space for creativity, love, and deep connection to flourish. Joy becomes not a distant destination, but an ever-present companion, accessible in each moment of openness and acceptance. Psychologically, this shift transforms your relationship with yourself and the world. You move from struggle to ease, from scarcity to abundance, and from fragmentation to wholeness. By stopping the forceful grasping, you invite a sense of liberation that transcends circumstances, rooted in trust and flow. In this liberated state, life no longer feels like a battle to win, but a dance to enjoy. A dance that is yours to join fully, freely, and joyfully.